Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me warmly welcome all of you to the 22nd European Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production. The roundtable was last held in our region of Central and Eastern Europe in 1999 in Hungary. So we are therefore delighted that it's now being hosted here in the Czech Republic for the very first time. My name is Michael Rosipal and I'll be your moderator for next 2 days. It's my pleasure to be here with you. We would like to express our gratitude to our partners, without whom this event could not have been organized. Main partners are Komerční banka and the Suez Group. And the event is held under the auspices of the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic. We also wish to thank all other partners and organizations who supported the preparation of this conference. Let me now to invite our distinguished guests to deliver their opening remarks. As first, Director of o.p.s, representing the main organizer of the conference, Mr. Pavel Růžička. Mr. Růžička, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. I'm happy to see faces I haven't seen for several years, but also new faces I wish to get in contact in the run of the conference. If I can start with, let's say, a bit personal feelings, or to frame my speech a bit in a personal way. The conference has more than 30 years history. The first was held in 1994, and it was the year when I just finished my secondary education and started at the university, knowing nothing at that time about things like cleaner production, resource efficiency, or even circular economy. Was a student of informatics and statistics, so a bit different disciplines. Well, nevertheless, I was then somehow steered more to environmental issues, to sustainability, and in 2012 I started cooperation with o.p.s, the organization which is currently organizing this roundtable. In 2012, it was also my first roundtable in Bregenz, Austria, and already at that time I was thinking how wonderful it would be to hold this conference, or such a great conference, in Prague, in the Czech Republic, in our region. Then a decade passed and nobody took the action, nobody initiated this activity. So finally in o.p.s we decided to take the matters into our hands and to apply for organization of European Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production in our country, in Prague. Well, we succeeded, and we are here finally. I'm standing here before you, and we are really starting the roundtable. So I'm quite happy. I'm proud that we managed to, let's say, get the conference back to our region after some 26 years, I think. So I wish good luck to the conference. I wish that when we are leaving on Thursday, we are full of inspiring and fruitful discussions, new information, interesting connections and networking, and that we enjoy the whole program, and not only, let's say, the official one, but also several side events which can be organized. Well, many thanks definitely to the whole organizing team, to all partners and colleagues who contributed, who make this event happen. Maybe there will be more proper time to do it during the closing session also. So yes, thank you very much for coming. I believe we will welcome many more participants during the day and during the next 2 days. And again, I wish the whole conference good luck, and let's enjoy this event.
Thank you, Mr. Ružička. I'm very glad we can be here at this beautiful campus and this renovated auditorium. So it's my pleasure to welcome here Vice Rector for Strategy of the Czech University of Life Sciences, Professor Jan Banout. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, it's my great honor to welcome you here in Prague and at the Czech University of Life Sciences for the 22nd European Roundtable for Sustainable Consumption and Production. We are happy to host this event which with more than 3 decades has brought together researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, and policymakers from across Europe and beyond. The ERSCP is not only the conference, but we consider it also as a community. It is a place where the knowledge is shared, where partnerships are built, and where new ideas take shape. So together, we address one of the most important topics nowadays: how to transform the way we live, or how to transform the way we consume and produce to future generation, for the future generation that may thrive. Here at CZU, sustainability is among our core missions. We see our university not only as a place for teaching and research, but as a living lab for sustainable solutions in agriculture, circular economy, and responsible innovations. So hosting this conference reflects our beliefs that universities must take an active role in shaping pathways to a more sustainable future. Over the coming days, you will engage with inspiring speakers, interesting sessions, and colleagues from diverse fields and perspectives. I encourage you to use this opportunity not only to listen, but to connect, to question, and to collaborate. So let us ensure that what beginnings here in Prague will carry forward into the concrete actions well beyond this conference. Finally, I wish you to enjoy not only the program, but also the university campus, which was ranked by UI Green Matrix as the 31st out of 1,477 campuses or universities worldwide. And within the Czech Republic, our university is repeatedly the best rated university according to the UI Green Matrix. So from this point of view, it's very I think actual that such kind of event is organized at our university. So on behalf of CZU, I welcome you warmly and I wish you inspiring meetings and productive conference. Thank you very much to be here.
Vice Rector, thank you very much. We are glad we can be here. I've been here like 20 years ago at this campus, staying at the dormitory for a few nights, and the campus looks completely different and renovated, so it's great to be here. Other opening remarks will be delivered by Chair of the ERSCP, Chair of the I'll say it, the proper name, European Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production, Dr. Frieder Rubik. Doctor, welcome, and please join us on the stage.
Yes, thank you very much. A warm welcome from my side. Thank you for the hospitality to being here in Prague, and thank you for Pavel and the whole team of Empress that they organized this conference in such a great manner. And I'm really happy that we have the opportunity to being back in Eastern Europe after 25 years. a long time. So what is the ERSCP Society? The European Roundtable Sustainable Consumption Production has a history up to the beginning of the 90s. So the first roundtable was organized in 94 in Graz by Hans Schnitzer and his team, and the society has been founded in 2013 as a formal society, and it's a European society, a society consisting of individual members. It's a non-profit society, of course, and the society will meet yearly. Tomorrow, the next meeting tomorrow, 6 o'clock, in nearby in the room, which is indicated in the program. And I warmly invite you to join the General Assembly of our society. ERSCP, what does it mean? What is our focus? E stands for European, of course. We have sister organizations in Asia, in Africa. I recognized this morning, I never met the people, but it's an African Roundtable, Sustainable Consumption and Production. And we are very active, and R stands for Roundtable. Roundtable means exchange ideas, cooperate, network, and of course, be open for new ideas. And our idea is to bring people, practitioners from different communities together, from business, from NGOs, from policy, the policy world, and of course, research world. So remains SCP. S stands for sustainable, of course. Sustainable is more than the traditional approach of environmental oriented research. So we bring together social, environmental, and economic issues, and we discuss all these things more with regard to a strong sustainability focus instead of the more, let's say, weak sustainability focus. C stands for consumption. Of course, a lot has been done in this area, a lot of research has been done, and in the 2010s, we have an increase of sustainable attitudes and perhaps also behavior, but nowadays we observe a rollback according to the survey. So the sufficiency paradigm, is it still alive? Is it dead? A policymaker told me some years ago, if I would speak within our ministry about sufficiency, I would be dead. I would be kicked off. And perhaps you know all these stories of such things. And what is the relationship between individual approaches and collective approaches and policy approaches? Is liberalism alive? What is about the intervention, the strong state? So this is a couple of questions. I could raise only some of them. With regard to the P, production, we have, of course, a lot of successes. So the reactive attitude has been a little bit changed into a more precautionary attitude, from passive to more active, from linear to circular, and so on. But is this sufficient? Is this really sufficient? And I think a lot of sessions are dedicated to the business questions and the business challenges, and the challenges, for example, if a circular business model is more than a recycling model. We observe, of course, an increase of regulation along the last 10, 15, 20 years, and the administrative burdens are exploding. At least this is claimed by industry and business, and the challenge is how to fine-tune macroeconomic politics with microeconomic challenges. How could we deal with the chances of digitalization in this context? So some questions only. So ERSCP means also how the things fit together, how we combine all the things, and how we come from a more competitive economy to a more cooperative economy to a, let's say, the term co-petition economy. What are the promises of the Green Deal, for example? Is the Green Deal dead, or is it still alive? Is there a flashback? So if we observe what is happening within the Commission in the last months, we observe that, for example, the Green Claim Directive has been postponed or perhaps cancelled. And so we need, of course, new intelligent solutions, new intelligence paradigms. Perhaps the challenge is how we could transform the current economic model to a new transformative approach. With regard to business, of course, the selling of products has to be changed, transformed into a more renting approach. Is it still valid, this approach? Is it still relevant, this approach? What does it mean for the actors along the whole chain? Are they expecting new roles? Some of the sessions are dedicated to these issues. So ERSCP means encourage new thinking, support exchange of ideas. We offer an open space for new ideas, for reflexivity, and we think that we offer a platform for exchange of ideas, exchange for new insights, and an open discussion point. So what we need from you, from us, is creativity, cooperation, clarity, courage. So enjoy, discuss, reflect, and network during these days, and let's start.
Dr. Rubik, thank you very much. Before we start, let me share also a few technical organization notes. The keynote sessions are open to all participants and will take place here in the main auditorium. The parallel sections are divided into 7 tracks, 7 sessions, and will be held in the building of the Faculty of Tropical Agri-Sciences. Lunch will be served at the Faculty of Economics and Management, and on the second day, tomorrow, we invite you to the official conference dinner, which will take place in the foyer of this auditorium. After every keynote address or presentation, there will be also time for your questions, for Q&As. So you can ask questions not only here from the audition, but also via Zoom. So I hope guests and participants who are joining us online will participate as well. So you can ask via Zoom, and you can use the chat for asking your questions. It's my great pleasure to welcome here our first special guest who will deliver the first keynote address. He was head of the negotiating team for accession of Slovenia to the European Union and served as Minister for European Affairs. In 2004, he joined the European Commission as Commissioner responsible for science and research. In 2010, he became Commissioner for Environment. After the mandate, he was appointed as a co-chair of UNEP Environment International Resource Panel. He's also a partner at Systemic and one of the founders of the Systems Transformation Hub. Please welcome here Dr. Janez Potočnik. Welcome to Prague, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. By the way, that was a very nice introduction, politely saying to somebody that it's old. Anyway, yeah, circular economy after a decade. Why, what, and how? So this will be terribly long, and but it will not be boring. That's what I can promise you. But I think what is important is that we start from the moment in which we are currently living. Quo vadis humanity, and where we go in Europe. I think one of the things which we simply do not take seriously, reasonably into account is this, that we are actually the first generation ever living in the socio-ecological space of planetary scope. That was non-generation before us. So even the Second World War was not the World War. Regional wars, it became world threat with the invention of nuclear weapons. So globalization, which is happening from everything from the climate change, internet, pandemics, so name it, it's actually putting us in totally different position than generations before of us. So we are more interconnected, interdependent than anybody before us. And that also means that our individual and collective responsibility has enormously increased, which unfortunately one cannot notice. So we are living in strange times, and it's impossible not to go back to the essence of the science of the humans, that's to philosophy. That's why this quote from Georg Hegel, the only thing we can learn from the history is that we learn nothing from the history. That is probably best understood at that very moment. And I very much like also to quote my Slovenian colleague, Slavoj Žižek, who said, it's clear that we are approaching the ecological and digital apocalypse, but we should not lose nerves. Everything under heaven is in utter chaos situation, it's excellent. But probably he's most known by his statement, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of the capitalism. So, okay, let's start from here and move now to the European Union. So, European Union, without a doubt, it's a visionary concept of visionary people, a model of cooperation which could today in many ways enlighten, steer even the global community. So, it is definitely worth of our efforts. And like van der Leyen put it nicely in her State of Union address 80 years ago, our continent was hell on earth. 40 years ago, our continent was divided by wall. But on each occasion, Europeans decided to fight for a better future. So it's worth looking in the future. But on the other hand, if we look from economic perspective, global supply chains are becoming increasingly volatile, and Europe and our economy is terribly fragile. We are import dependent on energy. We were even more in the past. We are still very much import dependent on critical raw materials, but of course, when the times are good, nobody cares for that. And competitiveness and strategic autonomy, which everybody talks about, can only be based on the responsible resource use and management, including fossil fuels. So, Politico was quite critical. This was one of the articles, end of the summer vacations period. Trump holds the military technological cards. He feels that he can dictate our trade agenda. Draghi answering to that, Europe is ill-equipped in a world where geoeconomic security and stability of supply sources rather than efficiency inspire international trade relations. And they were concluding to prevent the humiliation from becoming entrenched. The EU faces a huge task to reduce the dependence on the US in defense technology and finance. So if we look what was basically the essence of van der Leyen's address a few days ago, this must be Europe's independence moment to be able to take care of our own defense and security, to take control over the technologies and energies that will fuel our economy, to decide what kind of society and democracy we want to live in, to be open to the world and choose partnerships with allies old and new. Ultimately, it's about having the freedom and the power to determine our own destiny. And our greatest asset is single market, but it remains unfinished. It was quite interesting if you look to the speech a bit more in depth. It's more relying actually on Leta's report than on Draghi's report. And it's very much pointing the finger into the single market. So Laurence Tobiana, which I like very much, actually just recently published on LinkedIn something which is very simple and clear. There it's another way. Leverage our power, European market has weight. Access to it can be leveraged. Temporary relief from tariffs cannot justify eroding Europe's hard-won protections for the environment and consumers. Stick to the plan. We did not move away from Russian gas just to swap one dependency from another, reducing reliance on volatile fossil fuels imports and accelerating decarbonization. It's crucial. Only locally generated renewable energy can truly reduce our exposure and defend multilateralism. Europe cannot slide into transactional deal-making logic that corrodes international governance. Or if you want, diplomacy is indeed an art of compromise, but without a compass rooted in values, Europe risks losing not only leverage, but itself. So, in the Systems Transformation Hub, our reaction on the State of Union address was, European vision for security must connect climate and nature with socio-democratic needs. The constant pursuit of freedom, knowledge, and technology in service of people, planet, and prosperity. This is not a distraction from security in the traditional sense. It is the holistic foundation for stability, peace, and prosperity. So, yes, we are living in different times like a decade ago, but none of the challenges from a decade ago has disappeared. So, if I summarize, Europe, I think it's quite on a strategic crossroad. We are a major economic power. We are an important trade partner, leading the world in providing help to those in need. But we are simply not considered adequately in international geostrategical relations. On the top of what is happening, that is going more defensive, defined in a holistic sense, which is broadly direction we are heading to, so focusing on defense, security, improving competitiveness, protecting our values, democracies, while taking into account the European Green Deal challenges are still very much present. But to become a well-recognized and listened strategic power, this will simply not be enough. So we need to deeper and better align, at least in three areas: fiscal, external, and yes, also defense. And unfortunately, when one would say that sentence, people would immediately say, but there is no will among policy leaders in Europe that we would do that. But listen, if we would think in that way, we would not have European Union in the first place. It's about our future, and we have to seriously consider what steps next. Now, going to our bread and butter, to circularity. So, you all know that we are, according to science, already breaching 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries. So, it's alarm time. We are indebting future generations financially and by depleting the nature, which we all know that it's simply wrong. Apparently, we humans are the most intelligent species on the planet, so it would be high time to prove it. More than economic or a technological choice, this is actually a moral choice. So, why natural resources are so important? If you just think thoroughly, access and use of natural resources in human history was always a decisive factor of the well-being of any nation. That's why the countries which were more developed, like we are, were always seeking how to exploit those who had resources. So access to water, land, gold, oil, gas, and so on was a determining factor also of something which was driving the geopolitical efforts of consumption countries to control politically resource-rich countries. And it was central element of, I rather call it colonialization of nature than colonialization of people, because colonization of nature was actually driving colonization of people, which is central to fairness and equity, or better, to unfairness and inequity currently. So, when we talk about materials and resources, what we actually talk about: biomass, fossil fuels, metals, non-metallic minerals, all together, everything what is extracted from the earth, we call materials. And if we add to that land and water, we call that natural resources or short resources. That's basically the definition which we are using in International Resource Panel. So if we look a bit to the trends, in the last 50 years, all the 4 components have been of materials increased, so more than tripled in total. If we were looking to what is growing most, it's basically non-metallic minerals, which is easy to explain. This is the growth of cities, infrastructure in those parts of the world, where it's most of the population located, and they are growing the fastest nowadays. But one thing which we are looking very carefully at is so-called material footprint. Why? Because it's not pointing the finger on those countries who are material rich, but on those who actually consume those materials in their consumption. So it's domestic extraction plus net raw material trade balance. So if we look to the last 20 years, how this material footprint was actually moving, the interesting fact is that in Europe and North America, it did not increase because it was neutralized by technological development, which is excellent news, by the way, but it's happening in much too high level per capita consumption of those materials. In Africa and West Asia, it was growing, but mainly due to population growth. And in Asia and Pacific and South Europe, it was growing, but mainly to economic growth. So if you then look to the global figure, 62% growth, 2/3 can be explained by economic growth, 1/3 by population growth, and minor neutralization through the technological development. But it's interesting to see what is hidden behind the global figure. So if you don't depack it, you basically don't understand it. But if we look per capita, we see that in Europe, we are pretty solid, actually, comparing, if we look at to North America, which is almost double figure comparing to Europe. Then we asked ourselves a simple question. Which are those human needs which are most intensive? Built environment, mobility, food, energy are over 90% of all material use, everything what we extract from the earth. But if we look at in the country income groups, we get a really interesting answer that in low-income countries, they are using more than half of those materials for food provision. In lower middle-income countries for food provision and housing. In upper middle-income countries for housing and mobility, and in saturated economies, some 20 for all of those four critical needs. Which just means it's very clear from this what is essential human need, because you see where the things are first going. High-income countries use 6 times more materials per capita and are responsible for 10 times more climate impacts than low-income countries. The fastest growth is happening in the middle-income countries, and the sad news are, of course, low-income countries, which are basically moving nowhere. So, one of our critical points is this. We talk a lot about the consequences, but we don't talk a lot about the drivers and pressures. According to our research, extraction and processing of natural resources is driving the whole triple planetary crisis. You can basically explain 60% of global climate change impacts, 40% of air pollution health impacts, and more than 90% of water stress and global land and water eutrophication related biodiversity loss. So, if you want to address all those triple planetary crises, it is essential to go back to economy and how to use less of those resources. So our answer is we need to decouple the well-being growth from the economic growth, both together from resource use and all together from environmental impacts. So if you don't believe that well-being is more important than economic growth, then ask yourself a simple question. United States of America have 80,000 GDP per capita, European Union average $40,000 GDP per capita. Where would you like to live? So, focusing on all natural resources, in particular on those provisioning systems which are most resource intensive, and that is that. Which leads me now to the circular economy. What is circular economy? Circular economy is actually an instrument to deliver the decoupling I was talking about. So, policy instrument. But it's also part of the bigger picture of this economic, societal, cultural transformation, which is needed to align economic system with sustainable development goals and also with international commitments. It's just using common sense. Why? Because all nature is basic, it's the oldest concept on the planet Earth. All nature is based on the principles of circularity. Nothing is lost. Everything has its purpose. And the only question which one should ask is, are we humans part of nature or not? And if we are part of nature, why the hell we are not behaving accordingly? So, main question often overlooked to be addressed is this one: how to meet human needs in most energy and resource efficient way. So it's not about owing, it's about using. We don't need cars, we need mobility. We don't need light bulbs, we need light. We don't need chairs, we need to sit. We don't need refrigerators. We need chilled and healthy food. We don't need CDs. We want to listen to the music. By the way, that has already happened. We don't need pesticides. We want healthy plants. So dematerialization, rethinking ownership, and yes, efficiency should be complemented with sufficiency, policy leaders like that or not. So importance of the point of perception, because we are all central of the world with our brains and how we actually look to the problems. This is a nice example. When you complain that you are caught in a traffic jam in the morning, you are wrong. You are traffic jam. So that's how one needs to look to those questions, which leads me now to the climate change, which is receiving attention with good reasons, but with limited success. Why is circular economy important part of the solution? So it's relatively easy to say who is benefiting most from climate change and who is actually facing most of the climate change consequences. And if we look to some climate-related facts, global CO2 emissions were the highest globally last year. Global surface temperature increase above pre-industrial level, 1.5 to 1.7 degrees, according to Copernicus. These are monthly figures which are slightly varying up and down. So do you hear anybody panicking? I do not, but we have actually breached the target which we have set to ourselves already. According to science, the system that moves water around the Earth, it's off balance for the first time in human history. And according to IMF data, fossil fuel subsidies were, with the last figure which we know, 7.1% of global GDP still, which I nicely call the global hypocrisy indicator, because more or less it is. So if I go back to our friend Slavoj Žižek, in short, the truly courageous stance is to admit that the light at the end of the tunnel is most probably the headlight of the train approaching us from the opposite direction. That's probably the best way to explain where we are with the climate change today. What we need to understand, and we are not understanding well, energy transition is critical. Also, technological development is essential. But climate breakdown is a symptom of ecological overshoot. Material footprint is dangerously under-discussed, and most climate solutions lack focus on the root causes of the crisis. So we need to focus on the overuse of materials, including fossil fuels, on the waste output, which is on the economic model in which we are living, which is still very much prevailing linear economy, and of course, growth of human society. Of course, your answer would be immediately, but the expectations are that it will not grow a lot in the future, but it was growing a lot in the past. So last 50 years, more than doubled. So energy has no color. It could be used for good or for the bad purposes. If we are living in wasteful and unjust economy, it is obviously used also for bad purposes. And the essence of the circular economy and our efforts is exactly that. How to distill the good from bad in the economic system so that we can focus on the good thing and that we would not overuse the energy, and that also the energy transition as a consequence will be much easier. So we should not only focus on production-related energy challenges, but also ask for what that energy will be used. Hart Hagen nicely summarized that, saying, species causing the extinction of 100 species per day does not need more energy to do what it does. So climate change can only be effectively addressed by combining supply-side solutions, that is carbon management and energy transition, with demand-side solutions, decoupling circular economy, and of course, nature-based solutions, ecosystem services, environmental things. Just to say, because I have forgotten to say before, social transformation, it's actually essential for environmental transformation. If we do not simultaneously also do the changes for more equal world, you can dream about environmental transition. It's essential. But from this point of view, currently also all our COPs are in orange. So we don't discuss the rest. We will go a bit now to the green in the next COP30, but more when we talk about bioeconomy actually as a central possibility of the transition too. Which leads me now to the energy transition. So what is basically happening is that we are moving from fossil to minerals-based economy. And when we talk about critical raw materials, and we know that we need them much more if we want to do the energy transition, this is our response. Supply transition materials with higher environmental standards and social standards, securing enough supply, do that in a sustainable way, and do it through geographic diversification. And when it comes to circularity, apply the measures which are linked to recycling. The rest, it's basically not mentioned. Recycling is mentioned. But let me try to give you an answer. Is the recycling the solution in that case? So recycling, it's obviously a solution when you have stable needs. But when we talk about energy transition, we talk about increasing needs of critical raw materials. If you are increasing the needs, if you need 10 times more batteries 10 years from now, if you recycle all the batteries today, that's your answer. So it's no answer. And of course, you will go back to the questions of how to mine them and where to get them. So for me, it's indispensable that we add to that also other levers of circularity, more intensive use, lightweightening, lifetime extension, and in particular, buildings in a more resource-efficient way. So where is the problem with our approach to critical raw materials and overall transition? We start from the current needs and then we talk about future needs, but we don't question the baseline. We don't question that currently we are living in unsustainable conditions. And if we answer that appropriately, of course, future needs and future answers will look totally different than they are looking today. So circular economy, this is, I will go, it will be a strange sentence now, I will go through that really quickly because I'm going through all really quickly. But just to put you a bit a reminder on the developments on EU where I was pretty much behind. This is just to give a credit to Ellen MacArthur Foundation because they were quite critical. By the way, also what you have been explaining with all stories, this is all part of important contribution which finally moved then the policy wagon into the right direction. It happened during the Barroso Commission, and you might remember that split between climate and the rest of the environment happened at that moment. And then I was at that time responsible for environment, and we were, of course, then asking ourselves the question, now when we don't have any more climate change, what the heck we do? And, of course, our answer was then a resource story. So roadmap to a resource-efficient Europe, followed by European Resource Efficiency Platform. And an interesting thing is that's really a lecture of governance. I have really created this taking into account anybody who matters in the European Union space. 10 CAO. Ownership ex post is just using more time, and by definition people will go against simply because they were not part of the process. Make them part of the process. So reflecting that work, manifesto and short-term, medium-term and long-term recommendations were published, which led then to the first circular economy communication, which was actually addressing the waste legislation because we were forced to do the waste renewal according to legal requirements. Then we have done Green Entrepreneurship Action Plan, Green Employment Communication. Then it was buildings and food. Resource productivity targets were part of that package already. So if you look and read that was July 2014. Today, I have read it very recently. It's quite impressive if you compare it where we currently are. So I would really advise you look back and see where we were and what were our position. Some of you might remember that it was removed from the next Commission's agenda immediately. That was November, December. And what was the reason? Frankly, I don't know. I guess it's the reason Juncker's Commission was a bit more business orientated than our Commission. And I guess that the reason was that since the proposal was done by Environment Commissioner, that's never good. So let's remove it. The other reason was simply they have underestimated how it was prepared. And this was also the reason that they were forced to put it back in 1 year on the agenda, because there was a huge pressure coming from the business sector that they have to put it back. But the nice thing is, I was of course pissed off, but the nice thing, it was really beneficial for circular economy development because it finally started a debate what circular economy is. And I think it was a very good moment. Then we got the first Circular Economy Action Plan, 2015, eco-design, fertilizers, reuse of wastewater, green public procurement, funding, secondary raw materials, strategy on plastics, chemicals, products, waste legislation interface, followed by the European Green Deal, when of course Circular Economy Action Plan was part of that, followed by the Circular Economy Action Plan in March 2020. I will not go into details because you more or less know those things, which was, these are the parts which were part of that Circular Economy Action Plan 2, and all then put into the context what is necessary to make that implementable. So it was quite a good step. Clean Industrial Deal under this commission, okay, it is very much industry focused, but it's keeping circularity very much in the center. And it's keeping climate change also very much in the center, which one has to read as a kind of goodwill to continue with those. Of course, anybody serious should be worried about the omnibus. Omnibus you can understand in two ways, simplification and deregulation. That's basically omnibus. But since simplification in a very complex European Union is very difficult, they will go to deregulation mostly. So my mandate when I try to simplify research ended with a quote, simplification is simplification. So that's basically where we are. What next? These are policy recommendations based on GROW24, and that's basically the last part. So on the basis of Global Resource Outlook 24, Isabella Teixeira, the co-chair with me and myself, released a call to action. And this call has 4 missions. One is better orientation, national material use targets and science guidance, including a global orientation value. Mission 2, better measurement, indicators measuring the ability of provisions systems to meet people's needs in material efficient way, how to measure circularity actually. Mission 3, better economic incentives, policy and fiscal reforms to reflect environmental and social costs in material prices and shift subsidies. And finally, Mission 4, better transparency and coordination. We are basically proposing that we would need something like in energy area, it's International Energy Agency, that we would need something similar also in the materials field. We don't have it. We don't have a global coordination, and the supply chains are getting terribly complex. And it's actually, again, business sector, which is very much calling that something like that, that we need to improve governance in the area of materials. So I will not talk all for very much important. I will not talk about them, but I will talk a bit about this importance of material targets, because I think it's really a moment where we should join our forces to go in that direction. Why they would be important? As explained before, material footprint in high-income countries is too high, so we need to go down. That's pretty clear. And we can go down, also because we have already high level of stocks. But in low-income countries, they need to first meet their essential human needs, so they need to go up. But while going up, they need to growth, including the resource productivity and circularity measures already. So not repeating the same story as we went through, which is fully consistent with absolute decoupling and relative decoupling, which we are calling for in our analysis in IRP. There are two countries who basically have introduced that in December last year, Germany in Europe, in their circular economy roadmap, and surprisingly, Australia also in December shrink per capita material footprint by 10% by 2035, which is nice recognition that that is needed. Why science policy material targets would be important? First, they would give natural resources, materials management, proper recognition in policy space. This is currently not there. So currently it's not matching energy transition and GHG emissions. Second, it would provide a clear signal to all government services. So all parts of the government would need to take that into account in designing their policies, and a clear signal to the private sector that this is the direction where innovation will be rewarded and where investments will be rewarded. It would complement efficiency with sufficiency policies that would bring that sufficiency. Decarbonization with dematerialization and provide missing attention to demand-side solutions. It would contribute to strategic autonomy and competitiveness. It would introduce in policy debates essential question of who is crossing planetary boundaries through excessive resource use in production and consumption. And finally, it would effectively address the equity and fairness globally, as well as on national levels, and help closing the gap existing among global north and global south countries, which is unfortunately deepening. So the most frequent reaction, even from my environmental colleagues, is this one. This is not the right time where policymakers would be ready to set new targets and introduce new institutions. And my answer to them is, my dear friends, it's not about setting new targets and new institutions. It's about adding implementation measures, improving governance to deliver the already agreed ones in climate change, biodiversity loss, social inclusion, equity, in SDGs, climate, biodiversity, CLOPS, because we are failing. And this is essential way how to make it function. There are basically two ways to make circular economy a reality. Market signals, which are unfortunately currently still rewarding producers that extract more than producers which are basing their production on circularity principles. So circular economy is not attractive because it's economically not attractive, to be clear. And of course, it's also sending contradictory signals to consumers. Behave responsibly, but sorry, if you behave responsibly, you will have to pay more. So in economic faculty, if I would do that at the exam, I would fail. So it's basically asking people to act stupid. Regulation, setting a clear vision designed by policymakers based on science and public interest. But what is currently happening is sending market signals one way and regulation the other way, which creates a lot of confusion on the markets. And of course, a lot of lobbying, in particular in Brussels. So since I'm also professor of economics, this is, I apologize in advance, this is very simplified, but it's telling you the essence. Producers and consumers, of course, behave rationally, but if the signals which we are getting are production capital overvalued, over-rewarded, human capital undervalued, under-rewarded, natural capital not valued at all, and on the market that's important, then dream on about economic, social, and environmental balance. It will not happen. So it's essential to change market signals. Pavan Sukhdev nicely said externalities are today's profits, tomorrow's risks, and future losses. So when we are going towards Circular Economy Act, we have an excellent opportunity and need to institutionalize resource governance and define the resource use path. If we miss that moment, we are for next 5-10 years again on the wrong path. So if I go back to State of Union of von der Leyen, I'm convinced the future of clean tech will continue to be made in Europe. But for that, we also need to make sure that our industry has the materials here in Europe. And the only answer here is creating a truly circular economy. So we need to move faster on the Circular Economy Act. I would just add, we don't need only faster, we need also to move deeper in Circular Economy Act. So give a clear message to policymakers that many excellent examples of circular economy practice are needed, encouraging, super, but to make circular economy a norm, we need a system change. Like nicely said by Quintana, don't waste your time chasing butterflies, mend your garden, and the butterflies will come. And to end this part with the Socrates quote, strong minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and weak minds discuss people. Let's discuss ideas, which leads me to the conclusion. I think everybody in this room agrees that it's not easy being green. So the world has enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone greed, said a wise man. The world has indeed changed. From the limits to growth in 1972, we have more than doubled population, and we actually moved to the situation of growth of limits. What to make the future sustainable, some basic shifts would be needed. First, from humans in function of economic success and development to an economy in function of delivering human needs. Set the order right. That is why economy was invented. Second, from economy considering humans as external superior to nature to an economy acknowledging that we are embedded with nature and that destroying nature is destroying ourselves. I can guarantee you that in the neighboring economic faculty, they are still teaching that we are not part of nature. Third, from extraction-based production to a creation-based production. We should stop stimulating extraction-based economic success and reward responsible, innovative, creative ways of meeting human needs. And finally, from an egoistic, short-term based interest, governance structures and logic to cooperation and sharing sovereignty. We must improve our collective resilience, and we need a convincing intergenerational pact. So, what are the main blind spots preventing us to move faster and deeper? First, we are organized, including our governments, very much in silo thinking. It's about winning against the other, not understanding that environment winning against economy or the opposite is actually at the end losing both. So the holistic way of system change visions, it's simply missing in policy set. Second, we are focusing on consequences and we lack focus on natural resource use, management and market signals. So we lack focus on drivers which are leading to the problems. And third, our main attention is to the supply side, but it's very much missing the attention to the demand side because it's obviously more difficult. So sustainability transition is a major business opportunity. Why? Because it's unavoidable. Any transformation, it's a major business opportunity for those who are innovative, those who dare, those who understand the essence of the challenges ahead of us. So if you don't believe me, this is from the World Economic Forum. They do each year in January a survey when they are asking business leaders what are the major risks for business. And the answer for 10 years is extreme weather events, number 1, biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, number 2, critical change to Earth systems, number 3, natural resource shortages, number 4. So, in short, they know. Why do they not apply it? Because they would immediately lose the job. Because their jobs are on the future profits, they are measured on a totally different way. They are not measured according to the risks which we are collectively facing, but they are measured on the basis of the delivery of their company in the short-term period. So it's critical to remember that sustainability is not in opposition to competitiveness, but a critical success factor for competitiveness, security, fairness, and democracy, and for the coherence of the European project at large. And it's simply not good enough to constantly hear the same answer, which I'm very much hearing. Yes, you are right, but there is no but. So if you are right, and we have to do what we have to do, or else. And we know that the else, it's not good. Changing our relationship with the rest of nature, it's ultimately not only environmental, but also economic equity, security imperative to strengthen collective resilience. Currently, this relation is not stable. It will be resolved either with collective wisdom and effort or in a hard and painful way. There is no third option. So the future will be green and fairer and more equal, or there will be no future. But to end on a bit more optimistic way with a quote from our already friend, Slavoj Žižek, I'm a pessimist in the sense that we are approaching dangerous times, but I'm an optimist for exactly the same reason. Pessimism means things are getting messy. Optimism means these are precisely the times when change is possible. And do never forget, it is optimists who change the world, and it's optimists who live longer and better. So stay optimistic. Maybe since I'm coming from Brussels, maybe the best quote which I have ever heard, and it's very much applicable to the humanity of today, is the quote from the famous Belgian detective Hercule Poirot, when he was once asked why he is always speaking about himself in a third person. He replied something like that: if somebody is such a genius like myself, you need to establish healthy distance to yourself. So that's exactly what we need to do, establish a healthy distance to ourselves and take that responsibility seriously. Thank you.
Dr. Potočnik, thank you very much for the optimistic end and for very interesting insights and data. We have time for Q&A, so there are no questions from Zoom yet, but we have the mic here, and if we have any question here in the audience, please let us know. Yes, first question in the third row.
Yes, thank you very much for a very interesting talk. My name is Jacob Quistem from Delft University of Technology, and I would like to ask you, in addition to what you already told so convincingly, so how to bring in this sufficiency and this future need stronger? What do we need to do that? Because we're researchers, we discuss it, but how to get it into policy or how to get it into society? Is there anything you could say about that? I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Set material targets. You get
Will that be enough?
Sufficiency.
Because then you're actually relying on the policy or the targets, but you're overlooking the acceptance or the social side of that, what you need over there to make that happen.
If you set material targets, which of course, if you take it seriously, that means that each part of the government those who are dealing with the transport, with the energy, needs to consider how to transform their system that it would use less materials, which is actually putting in the center of the question, what is sufficient? So you have two possibilities, the hard and the soft part of the debate. The soft part of the debate, which is actually more what IRP is talking about, is can we meet the same human needs, so not questioning the level of human needs, by using less energy and materials? And our answer is, of course, yes. For that, you don't need a proof, just open TV for 5 minutes and you will see how we are bombarded, use new, throw that away and everything. So we are bombarded with the consumerism because it's an economic interest, because it's creating GDP, because it's actually, a lot of the things are designed totally wrongly. For example, I've been last week on a conference and a friend there gave an example that in Europe, we have 480 million, if I remember the figure well, of mobile phones still in the drawers, which are not recycled, which is a problem. But the problem is that we have 480 million in the drawer. That's the biggest problem, because it means that the mobile phone is obviously wrongly designed, and that it's not lasting as it should, and it's not repairable, and it's not upgradable, and it's not. We even have each 2 years different plug-in. So everything is designed in a way that it's wasteful. And just doing that on the supply side, we came with a calculation that if we would just, we have modeled that if you would just shift to more systemic approach, that you can save some 30% of energy and materials, just with that. And that's not at all questioning sufficiency from the consumer side, but it is sufficiency from the producer side, which is also part of the sufficiency, which we normally don't talk about. But then you have sufficiency from the consumer side, which is a bit more tricky question. It's very simple. It's connected, of course, with us as humans. When whatever we have, we normally believe that we have acquired the right to have that. And we are not ready to question either we are acquired to that and not. And this is, of course, in particular in the developed part of the world. And this is more, at least politically, difficult story to dig in, but absolutely it's possible with education, so that we start simply explaining people that also in a different way it's possible. So I do believe in the consumer's power and the power of change, but I also do understand that consumers to a large extent are manipulated by the producers and their interests, and that this is the major driving force that we are where we are. And all those stories are basically part of the resource sufficiency concept, just if you understand it rightly.
Thank you very much. Very nice input to the discussions we would like to have here at this conference, I guess.
Thank you. Do we have any other question? Yeah, the lady, the 5th or 6th row. And then gentleman in the green t-shirt.
Hello, thank you very much. Marta Santos Silva from the University of Minho in Portugal. I was wondering, speaking about environmental policy instruments, I've seen you spoken about deregulation, which of course is a tendency in Brussels, and you mentioned the monetary incentives and the subsidies. I was wondering if you think about the behavioral changes too, and namely on the power of green nudges to affect the behavior of consumers. We know that households are responsible for about 2/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. So is it that there is a power in green nudges? You were just talking now about the manipulation of marketing. Can we use manipulation for the green good?
Yes, the short answer would be, of course, yes. There are some things. I will just give you an example for example, of tax policy. If you if we today evaluate Minister of Finance, judge how good he or she is, we normally look only at one figure. That is, how well is he or she keeping budget in balance? Correct. We do not ask what signals they are sending to producers and consumers. This is simply a non-issue. So, are you taxing more the things which you would like less? Are you taxing less the things which you would like more? Are you putting all your state subsidies for purpose? Are you using green public procurement only for transitional purposes? And are you in the first place getting rid of tax havens, which are escape rooms for rich people and rich companies? We have them in Europe. We have two best cyclists in Slovenia who are located in Monaco. That's how the things function. And is that difficult to fix? No. You need just goodwill to do that, but nobody has that goodwill to, because it would be a revolution if you would go that way. But indeed, I think that the best power, it's always here or in Africa and everywhere. It's starting with education in an early stage and simply integrate that kind of logic thinking into behavior also in the future. So I'm absolutely convinced that this will happen because we will be forced to go that way. So it's just a question, how much we are ready to pay and in what way we are ready to find out that there is no other way. So, and I very much appreciate everybody who is on their personal level doing everything what is possible that we change that. But still, I think we need to point the finger on manipulation in which we are actually pretty much hooked.
Thank you, gentleman in the green.
Gentlemen.
Hi, Lucas Torst from Roskilde University, Denmark. My question to you is, what advice can you give researchers to reach policymakers when it, for example, comes now to omnibus? Yes. Is it signing an open letter like the people recently have done in Copenhagen Business School, the Copenhagen Declaration, I think they call it? Is it activism? Is it something else? How to reach policymakers or TikTok videos? I don't know.
Since it's a funny question because I'm co-chairing this science policy interface, which means that I have to deal with 40 researchers, and I was before also commissioner for science. And sometimes it's not easy to deal with researchers, to be honest, because everybody thinks that it's right, because the person with whom you are talking to has minimum PhD. So, but all in all, that's half joke. Truly, it is important, but I have also learned in these 10 years that sometimes it's really difficult for researchers to understand what are the best way to press on policymakers. For example, in this concrete case, which we are discussing today, the best way is currently it's public consultation opened for the Circular Economy Act. Send their contribution, because that's how the things are working and functioning. They cannot disregard it if it's black on white and if they get it. So I think it's always, but in the first place, I would start by making order in your own circles. And I think it's, by the way, I'm very much pushing also the idea of the fifth freedom, which is freedom of movement of knowledge in Europe. And during my days, we established also European Research Council, which I can write a book, how everybody was against. And today it's the most effective instrument. But if you want to be proactive, there are ways, but it means that you simply need to follow what are the best vehicles through which you can officially inform the policymakers about but for that you need a kind of consensus also in the scientific community, and I have found out that that's not so easy to reach. Even in IRP we have sometimes quite difficult debates because you have different streams of thought which do believe that solutions are in different directions. But that's science. Beauty.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Jan in the back, and then the gentleman in the third row.
Silvi Lorek from Sustainable Europe Research Institute. I very much agree with a lot of things you said, but two make me a bit nervous, actually. What you replied to Marta is to count on education. We don't have the time to wait that better educated people are coming up. The time is running out. And that's the same what you said, that you reply to colleagues or to people, when the time has come, we should jump on the solutions and agreements we have. Yes, definitely. But they are still not enough because the face is shrinking. So do we also have the more advanced things and how to bring them in then?
I think I was pretty clear which are the more advanced things which I would do immediately in the Circular Economy Act and what I would push there. And when I was talking about these 4 missions in the call to action, that's what has to be done now. But if you are trying to tell me that you are nervous because the things are not going faster and that you are frustrated, welcome to the club. So, yeah, but what I have learned in my political life is, of course, you get frustrated if you want to see the things which you know that they are right, that they would happen. But you learn one simple thing: repeat, 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 repeat. When you are fed up with yourself, repeat it again. So, and then suddenly you don't know why the things happen. But it is pretty much the process of creating a snowball effect from bottom up. So getting a kind of critical mass community which creates a lot of that pressure which the gentleman before you was talking about. And the situation in reality is getting worse. So when those two things meet, you have a moment where we are ready for change. But yeah, in many cases we will be too late and we will pay too high price. So, but is that something new? No. I think that's unfortunate how we behave. So it's just funny that we still talk about 1.5 degrees Celsius, but we are already surpassing it. So what is our plan? Going to 3 and then down to 1.5 or what? Because we are very well on the plan going to 3, but we don't have yet the plan seriously to go down. So as I said, energy transformation is super fine, necessary, but unfortunately it will not be enough. It's about economic system. And energy transformation does not talk about economic system being right or wrong.
Thank you. Gentleman in the third row would have a question.
Hey there, Zachary Mitchell, University of West England, Bristol. I really liked how you brought a bit of a sort of spiritual element to the way that you were talking about these solutions and this idea that to some extent we are going to have to face the disaster to have this realization of what the future needs to be. And it made me think a lot about this teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, this no mud, no lotus, right? In those sort of muddy moments, that is when the lotus arises and we can do something different. And my question for you was, in those moments, how do we leverage those things that seem so much like a crisis in the moment, but maybe in reflection are that point of inflection, that point of change?
No, normally this is a kind of non-existing question when those things happen. So I've had, for example, in environmental times situation where I tried to propose legislation about it was the chemical dumps in the factories that they would be more secure and so on, and I couldn't push it through when the catastrophe happened in Hungary, next year it was there. So it's pretty unfortunate that we don't want to act in a bit more way that we see and that we would foresee that those things would not happen. It's one thing which is making me a bit nervous nowadays in European Union context is this. You know, it's so easy to blame the greening policy for losing competitiveness. It's so easy but so wrong. Because if you are serious, European competitiveness was challenged already for decades. And it was challenged due to many reasons. One was the one which I already mentioned, that we never wanted to react on the fact that we are fragile from energy and resource imports. The second is that we have been a bit too self-confident that we are good and we can do the things better. The third is that we haven't really comparably invested enough in science, in innovation, and that we have lost some of the technological cycles. But now today, because we all know that those things are not easy to fix, now it's easy to point the finger on green legislation, which, yeah, in some cases, of course, you make some of the things a bit more complex, and I do agree that quite some of the rules could be written in the way that are easier to be implemented, but it's unfair reason. So I simply believe that we always need to ask the right questions if we want to get the right answers. And too many times we are simply answering the wrong question. And then, of course, we don't get what we want. But no smart answer on that, how we can do the things better.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. Yeah, the lady over there.
Yes, hello, I'm Annelies de Jong from EVL, Swedish Environmental Research Institute. I have a very short question. I'm not an economist, but I think you've touched upon many economic principles and that maybe new paradigms are needed. As a professor of economics yourself, are these developed? Are these underway? Because they might sort of support new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe even the well-being economy, for instance.
Yeah, they are developed, and but they are not prevailing. So it's not the thing which mainly we are teaching still in universities. So it's quite obvious that those new concepts are a bit more challenging and less consistent with the GDP. So if you want, I'm actually not somebody who is against growth, which sounds maybe strange, because growth is part of life, actually. But how you measure the growth, that's the problem. If you measure it only in GDP, which is a pure economic concept, then of course you have a problem. And that's, but that's the way, if you would ask politicians what the GDP is, I can guarantee you that 95% do not know what it is. But the answer is very simple: the amount of products and services which you put on the market in monetary terms. And there are special conferences which are about new economic theory. There are excellent books about new economic theory. But the fact is that the prevailing science, prevailing policy, prevailing business still bets on the neoclassical economics.
Thank you.
Short question, short answer.
Okay, thank you. Maybe there will be time to discuss it more at a coffee break or at networking meeting. So, Doctor, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation and for answering our questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Janez Potočnik. We will continuing shortly with keynote session number 1 right here, but some technical information from Pavel Růžička.
Sorry for keeping you in distance from the coffee break. I just have 2 organizational things. For those who brought their posters, please contact us at the registration desk. We will help you with installation. And we also can accommodate the posters from yesterday's PhD session. And the second thing I wanted to say, in the evening, there is a possibility to join us at the excursion to the botanical garden of the university. And at the registration desk, you can sign to the list.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And I just want to remind that we are continuing here 11:15. So now let's have a short coffee break and we'll continue at 11:15. Thank you.